It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Iowan uh, uh, tumbling and acrobats Coach Jacquie Eshleman. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in college acrobats and tumbling?
Yeah, so I grew up doing gymnastics and I loved it, and it was eventually I just kind of grew too tall for the sport. I'm 5'8", and I was a 5 foot nothing 90 pounder, and so going into all-star cheerleading was a very natural route for me. And then from there I went into competitive cheer, and then I had an opportunity to follow Coach Felicia Mulkey, who is now the Baylor head coach, out to the University of Oregon and help start the sport. And while being there, I actually thought I was going to go into sports broadcasting, and I loved it. I thought that's what I was going to do. And then, at the end of my senior year, she was like, Coach, she's like, Jack, you want to coach? And I was like, sure. What else am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't know. And so it just kind of like fell in my lap. And, I was always just a jock my entire life. So continuing to stay in sports was very natural fit for me, and something that I absolutely love doing. And it's an amazing opportunity to have such a profound impact on so many young lives. Not just, bringing home the W at the end of the day for where you're working, but more importantly, that student athlete experience. And it's something that I have really grown to love. And it's been one of my favorite parts of coaching.
What was that like going to the Oregon Ducks and competing in acrobats and tumbling?
It was awesome. I always tell my athletes now, I'm like, you guys are so lucky to have this for 4 or 5 years. And like now with the COVID waiver, right, they get 5 or 6 years. I'm like, you are all so lucky and so blessed. Do not take it for granted. It's an amazing opportunity. I did competitive cheer down at Kennesaw State in Georgia, and I loved the experience, and it was a lot of fun. But to only compete 2 or 3 times, to have to fundraise constantly, I remember Coach Fee, her mom would embroider our tank tops, and I think she probably got our tank tops from like Epic Sports or Walmart. So we weren't even like this all this nice stuff. And then we went out to Oregon, and I'm like, I have Nike, and like we just kept getting more and more gear, and we're like, Coach B, this is amazing. And so we laugh about it now. And, I tell my athletes, I'm like, you're so lucky to have the funding, the resources, the budget. I mean, here at Iona, we have our own facility. So we are incredibly blessed. And so many of these athletes, regardless of what division, just that opportunity to continue to compete in college and do what they love. It's just very lucky to be able to do that. So being able to go out to Oregon and have that experience and to be treated like a true athlete, regardless of division, was absolutely amazing. I mean, having the resources, like I said, of just simply a funding and a budget to give us gear, let alone having a locker room, an athletic trainer, a strength coach, designated practice times, following NCAA rules just for that health and safety aspect. Not having to go 5, 6 hours for practice, right? Like we can't go more than 4 hours. Having designated days off, those are all things you didn't necessarily get in cheerleading. So having that and having that support was huge, just from an athlete experience and actually truly feeling like the athletes that we were. So it was an incredible time. It was a great experience. There was 8 of us that followed her out there. Wish I could have done it forever. So I just tell these athletes, I'm like, you're so lucky. Just enjoy and live in the moment, because it goes by far too fast.
What was that like going from competing in competitive cheerleading to getting into acrobats and tumbling?
It's the same skill sets. So it really wasn't a huge transition. And back when I was doing it, we were definitely very much more similar to competitive cheer. I think our sport has evolved, where we don't just pull from competitive cheer now. You see a lot of influence from acrobatic gymnastics, from trampoline and tumbling. So we see a lot of pull from a lot of the different disciplines from gymnastics as well now. So, I mean, we're really truly this hybrid sport that has the ability for athletes to really stand out in very different skill sets, regardless of what background they come from. So I think for our sport, just watching that growth and really seeing, that transition, whether it was for me or for other athletes, it's really not a very difficult transition for them. If anything, they love it. I mean, it's for the athletes that want to compete and they want to be seen as athletes. And I think about it, growing up, I wrote so many papers about why cheerleading is a sport. And really, we've taken and we've put truth to that and why it should be seen as a sport and why the skill sets that these athletes are doing are that of an athlete and deserve to be seen as more than just, a team routine. And there's so much more that goes into it. So making that transition from competitive cheer to A&T for me wasn't a difficult one. And I was blessed to have a great coach to, help us along the way. So yeah, it was an awesome experience. And like I said, even then to now, regardless of where they come from, the athletes in the background, it's not usually a very difficult transition for any of them. And in all honesty, probably the college transition is harder than the sport transition piece.
Of course, during your time at Oregon Ducks in acrobats and tumbling, what was it like going to the NCAA championship?
So back then, when I was still competing, we actually weren't going to the NCAAs yet. And right now, we are in that emerging sport bracket. So the NCAA hasn't officially taken over. Once we're at 40 teams competing, then we'll be an NCAA championship sport, just like basketball is. So at that time when we were competing for when I was there, we actually still did competitive cheer as well as acrobatic and tumbling meets. And then it was really that following year after in 2011 that was strictly just acrobatics and tumbling meets. So we went from competing like the 2 to 3 times a year for competitive cheer, for doing acro and tumbling my very first year. We probably competed about 6 or 7 times. And then now with our sport, we typically compete anywhere between 6 to 8 times typically, besides our national championship. And now with our sport, we have a true postseason berth. There is stats that have to be followed, very similar to that of any other sport within the NCAA. And we're hoping here soon, within this upcoming year, that we will officially be a championship sport and that we'll have 40 teams competing. I mean, we're at 51 teams all over the country right now that are supporting us. The fastest growing female sport, the first sport to be created by women for women. So I just think that there's so much history and excitement generated around this sport in general. And just the sky is the limit. And it's going to be amazing in the future. I can't wait for next year. We're super excited to have a team here at Iona. The goal is to be able to compete next year, and we're well on our way to be able to do that and to be a part of that 40, that founding 40, that we're going to be an NCAA championship sport here, and we're right at the cusp of it. And I think it's going to be super exciting for us.
Of course, coming out of Oregon Ducks and competing, what was it like getting into college coaching and getting your first job at Quincy?
So at Quinnipiac, it was an awesome experience. I was so blessed. Marianne Powers, she is a phenomenal coach, has always been an amazing friend and mentor of mine. And she really, took me through it all and everything that I needed to learn, and just has been an amazing mentor. Still talk to her. She's great. But it was very overwhelming. I had no idea what went into coaching. I was like, oh, my coaches just show up to practice, right? That's all that goes into it. You have no idea all the administrative stuff that happens behind the scenes, the paperwork, the planning for practices, the gear ordering, food, just basic planning and preparation. I feel like probably about 75%, if not 90%, up to 90% of our job sometimes is the actual behind the scenes part. And then really that 10% of on the skills mat training with your athletes. But I just remember learning so much and being so overwhelmed. I probably cried all of the time. Made sure not to do in front of the athletes. Probably had a few breakdowns to Marianne, called Coach V a million times. It's a lot. You don't realize it until you go into it, because you just don't realize it as an athlete, everything that your coaches are doing for you. But again, like I said, I was so blessed. I've had 2 years to be an assistant coach, really learn and to grow, to understand how to make that connection and contact with my athletes. And then the recruiting aspect was huge as well. So it was very overwhelming time. I don't really remember all of it. I just remember being very overwhelmed and just learning. I felt like I was just constantly in the state of learning and growth. And again, just very blessed to have had Marianne over the years and continue to be a mentor for me.
Of course, what was that feeling like getting your first head coaching job as an acrobats and tumbling coach?
Yeah, so it was an experience down in West Virginia. I coached at Alderson Broaddus University. It is a small Division II school, sits right on a mountaintop, beautiful area, the nicest human beings you will ever meet in your life. People will give you the shirt off of their back. But I laugh now because I always say, I'm like, I don't think there's rules in West Virginia. And everyone tends to laugh at me. I'm like, no, like people are so nice. They're so helpful. They'll bend over backwards for you. But I felt like sometimes I was like, wow, what are the rules? What am I allowed to do? What am I not allowed to do? This is crazy. Everything was just so new still. And again, very blessed to have been there and to just to grow, to make a lot of my coaching mistakes, my young coaching mistakes I made there. But it was an awesome experience. Had a great administrative team, very supportive, was very blessed with my athletes, especially. Just like I'm doing here, I had to recruit a program from the ground up and really start it. And I had a couple girls that were a little bit older, one girl that transferred out, who really just took it upon herself to lead this team in that program and really teach all of those first year freshmen. But it was a blast. It was a lot of fun. I just enjoyed them so much. They had so much character, so much fun, so much personality, and I had a great experience there. But come year 5, I definitely kind of felt I was ready to go and to go somewhere else. And was very blessed when I had the opportunity to come up to Gannon, with a phenomenal school, one of the best in the PSAC. They're absolutely amazing for Division II schools, great resources. So it was a very natural flow for me to go from Alderson Broadus. Again, like I said, made a lot of my young coaching mistakes, learned a ton there, and then to go up to Gannon. So all great experiences, but that first year, whew, coaching in West Virginia, again, another overwhelming year, but it was fun. It was fun. That team was just a blast. So no expectations there. They were just an enjoyable group of young women to coach.
How was that transition like from building a program at Albers to then going to Gannon and building a program at Gannon?
Yeah, so when I went to Gannon, they actually already had a program. So I got to take over a team. So it was very different to go from a program and really start it and build it to go to a team that was already set there and to take over and to continue to elevate. But again, equally, they were great experiences for me. Going out to Gannon, that was probably the biggest thing, is that when I was hired was, prior coach had done an awesome job there, but we want you to continue to take that and take it up to the next level. So that was really a goal of mine, and some of that was like some cultural changes, some different expectations set for them, as well as, just that general skill aspect. And that was something I think I did a really good job of, and really creating there at Gannon, and really grew that roster. And then had several All-Americans, event championships, and this past year we really made a huge significant jump, finished second in the country, the first unoriginating team to make it to the national championship final round. And then again, several All-Americans. I've had other major award winners there. It was just an absolute blast being there. And this past year at Gannon was absolutely incredible. I think the biggest change for me going from Alderson Broadus to Gannon was just that cultural shift, and taking over a new program and applying a lot of my young coaching mistakes from Alderson Broadus to what I had learned at Gannon to really elevate that team and take it to the next level, from just a cultural perspective. And the winning portion happened very organically as I really focused on the cultural piece.
What were some of your biggest accomplishments at Gannon throughout your head coaching experience?
Some of my biggest accomplishments, from an accolades perspective, I think probably that would be finishing second in the country, having coached quite a few different All-Americans there, Louise Goodarm Award winners. We've had Colleen Kuzgrad, her leadership award. So that is equivalent to the Woman of the Year award for NCAA. So definitely have had some major awards there, as a coach, and then being a coach of the year as well. This past year was my second time winning it. But I think on a personal note, what I enjoy so much more than just the winning aspect, and don't get me wrong, I love to win. I have every intention being here at Iona that we're going to beat Baylor. That is absolutely 100%. I don't, not even just beating Baylor. I want to win a national championship, and I want to consistently do it. And not just event finals. I want to get all the way there to the team finals. So it's not just that, but the connection with the athletes is probably the most enjoyable part for me as a coach. It is watching them grow. It is watching them make mistakes and then learn and apply moving forward, and just seeing them be successful human beings after they graduate from me. I think one of the most enjoyable things for me at Gannon was seeing those alumni come back. I have close relationships with many of my former alumni, from Gannon, and watching them get married, have babies, be successful in their careers. I think that is such a bigger accolade to me than the gold medal, the trophy, any of those types of things. And again, I think that happens just naturally when you care about the people that you are coaching and you want what's best for them. So, do I love winning? Absolutely. But I think that connection with the athletes is probably my favorite part of coaching. And again, preparing them for the world after college athletics. So, yes, love the accolades, want to and want to win, but I think, again, those just naturally happen when you're doing the right thing as a coach.
What was that process and transition like from going from Gannon to Iona to become the next head coach for Iona?
Yeah, so when I was hired here this past November, um, it's definitely been a transition. I spent a long time since I've had to recruit a program from the ground up since Alderson brought it. So gosh, like a solid 10 years. So it's definitely, there's been some changes. When I was first hired at Alderson Broadus, recruiting was definitely gym hopping and educating people. There wasn't combines or any of that. Now at Iona, there is combines. Not as much right now. I've been doing more gym hopping. There wasn't social media at that time at Alderson Broadus like there is now. So being able to use like Instagram, there's quite a few other coaching websites, which has been really nice as well to help. But as far as like that transition piece, I think the biggest thing for me is just the amount of paperwork that goes into it. Just the rules are a little bit different at the Division 1 level than the Division 2 level. So my poor compliance officer, Abby, God bless her soul, I probably email her far more than she would like me to, asking probably dumb questions. But I mean, it's a lot to take in and to learn, even from Division 1 to Division 2, although there's a lot of similarities, there's a lot of differences. When I was at Gannon, me and a former colleague who's at another Division 2 school, we used to laugh and say, it is not D2, it is Division 11. And we would laugh about it because we felt like sometimes there's that much of a gap between Division 1 and Division 2. And so I think probably coming here to Iona, it's been more of the background stuff and the behind the scenes stuff, learning a lot of that. But again, God bless everyone's souls here. They have been so helpful. I can't get over how helpful everyone is here. I've made a lot of mistakes, but people just keep being helpful and helping me learn and grow and be better. So that's all I can really ask for. I've had an amazing support system here at Iona. And right now I'm just working remote. So I won't officially move until the summer. So it's been a little bit of trial and error in some ways to figure out how to make that work. But again, I've had a great administrative team that has been willing to support me. So I think that's made things quite a bit easier. And then from the recruiting spectrum, it's like I said, it's been going to gyms, talking to coaches, using some of those old contacts, and it's been exciting. It's been exciting just to see the amount of interest here from 2023s and 2024s who are very excited about the A&T team here in this area. So I think it's just going to be an awesome experience for all of our athletes and as well as just the general community, and to really give life to so many little girls who love doing these skill sets, to actually be able to see them, I think is going to be a lot of fun next year.
As a coach, what was that like making that jump from a Division 2 to Division 1 level?
Um, it definitely wasn't scary in that sense. I mean, a little bit of more excitement. I would say I was just more excited. And I feel like I'm still doing the same job. My job is to go out to recruit, is to create a successful team culture. I'm sure there'll probably be some other bumps in the road as I actually have a team on campus next year. But I think probably the biggest thing has just been learning a lot of the NCAA Division 1 rules, which are different than the Division 2 rules. And I have a great support system within our acrobatics and tumbling community in general from other coaches that are currently coaching, our executive directors. I think those things have really helped as well. So I haven't had too much of an issue. I mean, I'm sure next year I'll probably have, like I said, more bumps in the road as I actually physically have a team on campus. If anything, I'm more excited just because the resources are so much more at the Division 1 level. Like I said, we have our own facility, having an incredible amount of mats, all of those different types of things I think have been awesome to have, besides the things like having a strength and conditioning coach, having a full staff, knowing that we have academic advisors that are directly for our student athletes, athletic trainers, all of those different things. And a lot of those things I had at Gannon, but not to the level that I have currently at Iona. Just that Division 1 student athlete experience is so much more. And having been a former Division I athlete, I can definitely see that from having coached at now both levels, just those differences in them. And again, it's for the choice for the athlete to make what they want. But I think that's probably been the biggest thing for me is just the amount of resources that are there for your athletes at the Division I level that might not necessarily be there at the Division II level.
As you get prepared, what does a typical game day look like for you as a coach versus what will it look like for your players?
Yeah, so I think for me as a coach, it's definitely a lot more stressful than it ever was as an athlete. And I laugh about it because actually something that I do remember from being at Quinnipiac and coaching is I'll never forget our first away meet and coming out of the hotel and looking at the head coach, Marion Powers, being like, I'm really nervous. She's like, yeah, it's quite different, isn't it, being a coach? And I'm like, yes. I'm like, I was never nervous as an athlete. So actually, being a little bit nervous as a coach is quite a bit different because and I remember her telling me like it's because you don't have any control, and you don't have any control what your athletes physically do in the moment other than what you've practiced and prepared for them. So I think the biggest thing for me as a coach, is making sure that they're feeling consistent, they're feeling prepared as they're going into game day. We've had lots of run throughs. They know exactly what is expected of them, outlines, itineraries. Those things are very important to me to help set my athletes up for success, but then also talking through the mental aspects with them. I love to do worksheets with my athletes, to do some visualization techniques. And I think that really helps prepare them, just noting that so much of our sport is not what the average sport is asked to do. And it is a lot more mental than necessarily physical. And yes, it's physical, but a lot more mental, I would say. Just we're telling our bodies to do things that they shouldn't be doing. Like who tells their body for fun, like let's just flip ourselves over and just somehow land on our feet. Like that's not atypical of a sport, and that is very difficult, and that's very mental. So preparing them mentally is absolutely incredibly important. So really on that game day, it's making sure that they are feeling really confident, really comfortable, doing a lot of run throughs, a lot of things mentally, so that way they are feeling very much in control and focused and ready to go. And then for me as a coach, it's just continuing to stay in that moment with them and making sure that they're moving forward proactively and keeping that energy up and making sure that they are aware of that and that they are using each other to lean on. For my athletes, I think the big part for them is the confidence piece and then using their teammates and making sure that they understand that you are on a team sport now and it's not just all on you. You can relieve a little bit of that pressure and just have fun. And that's the point of game day. That is to celebrate and to have fun and not worry about all of the practices that you put before. You're prepared. You're ready to go at that point. So game day should just be a blast for you as a student athlete, and everything else will just happen because you've already prepared for it. That is the preparation moment that happens is when you are competing. So those are a little bit of, again, that preparation for game day, and just again, like really keeping them in the right headspace mentally. And again, if they have fallbacks, it's my job to pull them back on the moment and be like, it's okay, let's next play it, let's move forward. How many times does a quarterback, drop a pass? How many free throws does a basketball player happen? It's not just about making the shot, it's also about rebounding to get it back in. So I think those are really important analogies for our athletes to understand that they don't have to be perfect every time. A lot of time it's about the fight and how we play after that. But yeah, so that's a little bit of game day for us.
As a head coach and getting prepared for this upcoming season, your first season at Iona, how has it been like obviously building the schedule and building the teams around you?
Yeah. So we won't get our actual schedule until typically about October. So right now we do all compete against each other regardless of division. Once we hit those 40 teams competing, then we go to the NCAA championship berth. And then from there, then we start to kind of continue to grow within those divisional components. That way, eventually Division II and Division I can be a little bit separate or can be separated to their own national championships. So regionally, from an expansion standpoint, we're talking to athletic directors, we're NCAA conventions, about our sport, what it looks like in terms of a Title IX perspective, how it can help promote that growth on your university and bringing in new athletes to your campus, as well as, when you look at the skill sets that we're doing, I mean, our sports rival, if not beat that of football at the youth level. I mean, everybody knows somebody who does, gymnastics or just cheerleading, dancing, weightlifting. Like, who doesn't know somebody in their family or within their significant circle that does those skill sets? So our sport is such a natural birth for collegiate athletics. So for us here at Iona, yes, we absolutely want to continue to grow regionally. We have Quinnipiac that's here. Long Island University just added us. Obviously, would love to have some other MAC conference schools add us. We also have, Presbyterian, Morgan State, Duquesne, some of those other mid-major Division ones that are here besides Baylor and Oregon, down south and out west. Obviously, want to continue to grow that. And I think a lot of that is going to come from seeing the success here we have at Iona, just from the amount of students here that have the potential to go into this sport in college. I mean, here in Long Island, I've been recruiting this entire week in Long Island, and it is incredible to see the amount of cheer and gymnastics programs here. I mean, this is an incredible area for that. Not to mention there's all of New Jersey. New Jersey is huge in competitive cheer and gymnastics. So there is an incredible amount of athletes, and not everyone can be a gymnast. Not everyone can be on the sidelines at a football game for an SEC school. And there's not every athlete that wants to do that. A lot of athletes want to just compete. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be on the sidelines. I wanted to compete. So for us, those competitive cheerleaders in high school cheerleaders are great fits for us who want to compete. The same thing with gymnasts. There's a lot of gymnasts who do not excel on every event, and our sport allows them to really excel in a new and different way using the skill sets they already have. So there's, nothing but positivity when we're looking at growth within our sports. I'm very excited for that. I mean, like I said, there's 51 of us all over the country, and I think back when we started this sport in 2010. There was like 6 teams. That's it. When I was up at Alderson Broaddus, I think it was like 9 or 10. So, and that was in like 2013, 2012. So to see that growth from then is insane, and the last sport that was created the way that we've been created, starting at the collegiate level and trickling down into like the youth level was football. And you look at football, I mean, what school, doesn't have football, whether it's at a high school or college, all over this country. I mean, there's so many football teams everywhere. Same thing with basketball. Like it's crazy when you think about that. And so for us, I think the sky is the limit for our sport. There's so many student athletes that compete in this skill set all over the country. I think it's a very natural fit for athletes coming from cheer and gymnastics who don't have an opportunity or wouldn't have an opportunity otherwise. I mean, those opportunities bottleneck at the collegiate level. So we're just really giving them a home, and that ability to potentially get a scholarship, to compete, to have that proper student athlete experience that they deserve to have.
Now, as a head coach, what is it like going back to your alma mater of Oregon to compete against Oregon and going back to some of the teams that you coached at the beginning of your career?
So it's actually probably harder for me to coach against like the teams that I used to coach at. So when I went from Alderson Broaddus up to Gannon, it was definitely hard those first 2 years competing against the Alderson Broaddus athletes, just because I coached and recruited so many of them, and I still loved them dearly. And I don't doubt it'll be the same way here at Iona, going against Gannon if we go against Gannon here in these next upcoming years. As far as going out to Oregon, that doesn't really bother me. I mean, I've been out of there for enough time at this point in time. And honestly, we beat them this past year at Gannon. So I don't doubt that we'll continue to do that here at Iona. So if anything, I just want to beat them more. I'm a competitive human. I like to win. And, regardless of who I'm going against, I want to beat them. I want to win, whether it's Oregon, it's Baylor, it's Quinnipiac. Love all those different people and administrators. Same thing with Gannon, but I still want to win at the end of the day. It doesn't mean I don't love the athletes. It's no hard feelings. I want to keep growing. I want to do better, and I want to win, and I want to bring home an Addy. So I think when it comes to that thought process, it allows me to really focus on what I need to, which is my student athletes, and making sure that they have the best experience they possibly can on game day. I don't actually typically pay attention too much to what's going on across the mat. I'm usually just really focused on my own athletes. So I think that kind of helps a little bit too. If anything, I like going there and beating them and be like, I beat you.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you plan to build for Iona?
Yeah. So something that I love about Iona is that it is very family aspect oriented, which is something very important to me. I'm a mom. I have 2 little girls, and my team, I feel like anywhere I've been, that family feeling is instrumental in success and having a positive, healthy team culture. So going to Gannon, I called it a sisterhood. So we always referred to it as a sisterhood. Here at Iona, I'm saying family first, which I feel like for Iona is something that's very natural for them. Our athletic director, Matt, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but he's like, yeah, Gales take care of Gales, Jackie. That's important for us. And I was like, wow, that is just so nice. I just appreciate that. So I think that we're all family here at Iona, and that it is a Gales take care of Gales mentality was something that really drew me to here and made me want to be here and have made me be more grateful for this experience. And so for me, with my student athletes, and as I'm recruiting and as I'm starting to create this culture, it is Gales take care of Gales methodology and mentality, and that family first is very important to me. And my kids are going to be around, they're going to see my daughters grow up. I have a 6-year-old and I have an almost 4-year-old here in a couple weeks. So for my daughters, these young women are their heroes and they want to be them one day. So I think it's really important that my current student athletes see that and also note that I can do that their coach can be a career woman and be successful as well as be a mom. And that's, you can do both. And that, I think that's something that isn't seen enough in this day and age, is that you can have everything you want to have if you put enough work and effort into it. So for me, with my athletes, creating that successful team, successful culture, it starts with family. And so that's something that I'm very focused on right now as I'm recruiting, is finding the right athletes as well as their own families and the right families that they have. It's not just the athletes I'm recruiting, it's their parents, because they're a part of the family too. So just that family first mentality, I think, is really important, is going to allow us to have a really successful team culture here.
What does the recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes looking to go into acrobat and tumbling?
Yeah. So as far as the recruitment process, similar to that of any other sport, it's probably one of the biggest questions we get. So whether that is, me going to their gyms or to combines, or them coming at me and reaching out to me, first thing I always say is fill out the recruiting questionnaire. Go to our website, click acrobatics and tumbling, click the recruiting questionnaire, or shoot me an email directly. So that's always the first steps in the process. Next steps is, compiling some videos, sending me your skills. Especially right now where I can't have camps and clinics because we don't even have a team. So visits are only happening as like visit days. We aren't even doing like overnight visits at this point in time. So being able to send me those skills, coming to campus, scheduling Zoom calls. I think that's another big one for me, is that typically when a recruit fills out their questionnaire, I email back with a general recruiting email with a little to-do list that I want them to do. And then also asking for, what does the next 2 weeks look like for you? Because I want to set up a Zoom and I want to talk to you and I want to talk to mom or dad. So I think that that's really important, is that we are making that connection and finding out, what does the student athlete want? What do I want? What are our general expectations of each other in the program? And then, what does next steps look like moving forward? Is it potentially coming to campus? Is it sending me film? What kind of skills am I looking for? So all of those types of things are usually kind of going in pretty fast in that process. The 2023s, I'm still very much actively recruiting those right now as I'm trying to field a team. My 2024s, just kind of starting to touch base with a lot of them, hoping that all of our equipment is in. We have quite a bit of it in already, but hoping that, come June or July, we'll be able to have some camps or clinics, have the 2024s on campus for a camp or clinic, so I can kind of evaluate them a little bit more in person, as well as, being able to have them now just even on visit days to be able to see the campus, I think is really important. The more times they come out and see the campus, the more I get to know them and talk to them, the better we can see what the fit's going to look like for us. So I think that that's probably the biggest things when I think about that recruitment process. It's not a tryout process. It's not like, cheer. A lot of times it's like, all right, apply to the school and then we'll see you in June to try out. That's not how it works for our sport. You are recruited just like any other student athlete on our campus. We have, an NLI, so they have a national signing day, all of those good things. Just like any other athlete does. So I think that's probably the biggest and most important thing, is just that initial contact with coaches, so that way they can lead the student athletes with the process and the next steps at each of their institutions. So for me, that's probably the biggest thing, is just shoot me an email, fill out my recruit questionnaire, so that way we can touch base. Even Instagram is great these days. DM the coach. Those are great things to be able to do, because then again, we can kind of get in contact with you and talk you through those next steps moving forward. But yes, that's a little bit about that recruitment process.
As you begin the official visits, what will they look like in the future when you start doing them?
Sure. So right now, we are having visits. So at this point in time, it basically entails coming to campus, doing a jersey or a roster shot of some sort. And typically, those are some fun ones. Mom and dad jump in there, some ones with me as well. So we have a lot of fun with those. And then we typically tour the new Rochelle campus, as well as then I usually take them over to Bronxville so they can see the campus that's over there. We just have that beautiful new Kelly Center of Health Sciences, other buildings that are being renovated. I love to show them our facility that we're going to be practicing in. That's going to be our home that's exclusively for us, and kind of talking through what those renovations are going to be and how excited we are for that. And then if it's possible, I like to be able to take them to a basketball game. If not, then usually we're just either going out to lunch, doing a quick Q&A. If we do basketball, we usually go to a basketball game so the athletes can kind of see that area, which is where we'll be competing in, as well as kind of see what the general students and the student body atmosphere at a game is like, all of that good stuff. And then again, having some sort of either dinner or Q&A session after as well. So that way they have that ability to ask me questions if I need to pull up a meet so they can kind of see a meet and understand that a little bit more. That's typically what we do after. And then if we need to have individual time after, we can. But usually after I finish that meet or that official visit weekend, I usually then send an email, usually within about 24 to 48 hours after, asking for follow up, usually within 1 to 2 weeks, to potentially look at an official offer for the team or the program.
As a head coach, was it like obviously seeing your players get to put on that first jersey and represent the program as being an inaugural program?
Oh my goodness. It's going to be awesome. I'm excited. I think it's going to be an absolute blast for this team next year to be able to put on that, Iona jersey and to be a part of something so much greater than themselves. They are creating history. I mean, it's not very often in your life you get to say you were the first of something. So I think that's just going to be an awesome experience for all of them. It's going to be such an amazing adventure. And I think the best part is that there's really not going to be any expectations. You're a first year team. No one really expects too much of you. So I think if anything, it relieves a lot more pressure and allows you to have a lot more fun. Not to mention, I love being an underdog and surprising people. So I think that makes me excited as well. But yeah, it's definitely very emotional as a coach to watch that. It's even more emotional once they graduate from you and you see them after and again coming back as alumni. So I'm excited for that as well. So that'll be a lot of fun too to watch them as they kind of hit senior year and they graduate and having them come back and being a part of the program as alumni. So all great experiences and very emotional experiences as a coach.
What are some of your future plans moving forward in the program?
To win a national championship. I think that's probably, one of the big ones for me is, I want to be able to win a national championship, really be able to promote this sport and the team and the program here within this region. I think it is a really big goal for me as well. So I think those are probably my two top goals. And besides the other things of like continuing to have a healthy team culture, continuing to grow the roster, seeing my athletes succeed after college, all of those normal things. But yeah, those probably are the two biggest ones for me from an overarching standpoint.
What advice would you give those high school athletes looking to become college acrobats and tumblings?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me is there's a place for you. So there's whether it is at Iona or somewhere else, there's definitely a coach and a program out there that's going to be a right fit for you if this is what you want to do. If you come from a background in cheerleading, whether it's competitive or high school cheer, if you come from gymnastics, any of those disciplines, TNT, acrobatics, artistic, if you're doing an Excel team or a yoga team, you have the ability to still compete in college doing our sport, using the skill sets that you already have and that you love, just in a new and different way. And it allows you to grow. And I think something that I love, regardless of which background the athletes are coming from, something that I love to hear from my athletes is what they love about the sport is that it is so team oriented and they feel like they thrive so much more because of that, and how enjoyable that is to just live in that moment and to have that game day aspect and to really be competing for an hour and a half to 2 hours on a university campus, traveling all over the country, competing multiple times throughout the course of the year, not just once or twice. It's having that full season of 6 to 8 meets. It's huge, and so that's one of the things that I always recommend to all of these athletes, regardless of where they're coming from. Look into it. You don't know if you're going to want to do it until you have seen it, until you've talked to the coach. Maybe if you have the ability to try it at a camp or clinic, do it, because you're not going to know until you actually take the chance and take a little bit of a leap and get to know the sport and get to know the coaches a little bit more. I don't regret it. If I could have done it forever, I would have. This is the epitome and the professional of our sport, especially for so many of these athletes who wouldn't have had an opportunity otherwise. So look into it, get to know coaches, email them, fill out their questionnaires. It is not too late. You know, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. So there's a spot for you, whether you can tumble, whether you can't tumble and all you do is stunt, or if you do multiple different sports. Even if you come from a background of weightlifting and diving, there's a spot for you on our rosters doing those skill sets. So I think we have a lot of ability to use a lot of athletes with a lot of different specialties. And I think that's something that is very unique and very cool for our sport.
What advice would you give those athletes that are looking to get into college coaching like you did right after performing?
So I think my biggest thing is I would say let your coaches know. So talking to your coaches that way in your senior year, you can kind of start to get a little bit of a background within the sport and what kind of goes behind the scenes. And our sport is growing so rapidly. So there is huge need for coaches, whether that is assistant coaches, graduate assistants, head coaches. If you want to do this sport and be a part of it, beyond just being a student athlete, you can absolutely do it. If you're coming from a background of gymnastics or cheerleading and having did those in college and you're like, I think I might want to coach the sport. Absolutely. We have lots of opportunities to be able to do that. We can teach you a lot of the things that we're doing. You can learn all of the different things that we are doing because, again, the backgrounds that you already have from both cheerleading and gymnastics, they work so well for our sport. So absolutely, you can 100% be a coach in this sport. We are, there's that we're not just creating an opportunity for women to compete, but also for coaches. I mean, and you really see that the amount of young women that are coaching our sport is absolutely incredible to see that. And I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe all head coaches for our sport right now are female coaches. And that is very unusual for women's sports or for men's sports, obviously, but just for women's sports in general. So we're very, very lucky to be able to not just be providing opportunities for these young female student athletes, but also opportunities for careers after as well.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to get into coaching, whether it's assistant coaches and then making that jump to become a head coach?
Again, I would say educate yourself. If you have the ability to get your master's, get your master's. I waited like 8 years, so I went back and did it, and whew, that was hard. Would not recommend that. Do it right after college. Learn about the sports. Be mentored. Reach out to people, not just within your tight circle, but reach out to other coaches. I think all those different things definitely help you. Don't be afraid to reach out to coaches, especially the seniors right now, or those who are current assistant coaches. Reach out to other coaches and be like, hey, do you have a position open up? Especially if there's a school that you're like, I would really like to go and coach there, get you closer to home. Don't be afraid to reach out to those current head coaches and ask them, as well as if you are a current student athlete to, send your resume out. I mean, let people know who you are, introduce yourself. Again, just put yourself out there. The worst that they're going to say is no. And it's nothing off your back, right? So might as well put yourself out there. You're not going to get harmed in the process. So put yourself out there, get to know people, make connections, put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to do that.
What advice would you give those head coaches that are looking to build their own program like you have from 2 programs?
I think the biggest thing I would say is spend time and get to know your athletes. I think especially this generation, the more connection we make with our athletes, the more they're willing to do for us. So just yelling at them isn't going to do it. I think that's probably one of the things that I learned throughout my years of coaching is, you can't just yell at your athletes and expect them to do it. You have to know them. You have to get to know them, to learn them. Note that every student athlete is going to be a little bit different in how they learn and how they grow and how you might need to coach them and coach them up. Or sometimes in the moment they get coached up too much and you got to coach them down a little bit and get them a little bit more relaxed. But I think really spend time getting to know your athletes, have fun with them, be yourself, show them your personality, show them you're vulnerable. I think that was one of the best things that I ever learned as a coach. And I actually learned it from a former student athlete who was my assistant coach, was that ability to be vulnerable with my athletes and not being afraid to be vulnerable with them. I think that they respond incredibly well to that. And they're willing to do more for you, and they'll work so incredibly hard for you if you do that, and you really give them that family and that supportive atmosphere, and you're just as vulnerable to them as they are to you. I think that's just really how you build a successful team culture and how you get your team to the next level. And then winning, it just happens. It happens organically.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the program at?
So if you're looking on social media, Instagram, it's at Iona Acro Tumb. So it ends at a B. So that is our Instagram. And then I'm at Jackie1113 on Instagram. And on Facebook, I don't know if we have a Facebook account in all honesty. I just know that I have an Instagram because I use that one all of the time. And then on Facebook, I think it's just my name. To be honest, I don't really pay that much attention. I usually have my assistant coaches kind of pay a little bit more attention to the social media aspect in all honesty. But until I hire her this summer, I'm kind of doing that right now. So trying to figure a lot of that out. I'm not very technologically inclined, but I'm learning and I'm growing, I'm getting better. So
Thank you again, Coach Jackie, for your interview, and best of luck in your future at Iona as the head coach for acrobats and tumbling.
thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Jackie, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.